Hello, everybody.
What's up, party people?
Welcome back to the
Downlore.
I'm Natalie.
I'm Claudia.
And as always, we are gathered here today on God's internet once again to talk about books.
Always books.
So today's episode is going to be a little bit of a free-for-all. We're going to just chat about what we're reading currently and recent news, current events, and things that we've been seeing online. Specifically, I recently finally completed the Sarah J. Maas Gauntlet and got through Kingdom of Ash and Throne of Glass.
She made it, y'all. She made it.
And we also wanted to talk through Rebecca Yarrow's Empyrean Book 3 announcement.
Yeah. So,
what's in store for Onyx Storm?
Current events in the book world and in our book lives. What I think is so funny is that we're like, oh, this is going to be a free-for-all. Y'all, we still have like a legit outline. Like, we have notes. We have a plan.
Listen, when it comes to my baby boy Chaol Westfall, I don't play. All right.
We
wrote a dissertation defending Chaol Westfall. So Chaol haters, strap in because we're gonna tell you why you're wrong.
We got 5-paragraph essays. We got a thesis statement. We have supporting evidence. We have conclusions. All right, so spoiler alerts for all of Throne of Glass. Finally, we'll talk about Kingdom of Ash. We've been kind of avoiding that because I didn't want to ruin any of the deaths, honestly, for Natalie. I think I like over prepared her. Natalie was like, everyone's gonna die. They're all going except for Aelin and Rowan, and I was like, okay, no. No.
We'll get into it more later for sure, but all I have heard about Kingdom of Ash was like, oh, it's painful, like buckle up, you're in for a ride. And like it was definitely a ride, but after hearing all of the hype around it being so devastating, because I always like to complain about Sarah J. Maas bringing her characters back to life after killing them. Like, it's one of my biggest Sarah J. Maas pet peeves next to her villains, which we'll also get into again. That I just assumed, oh, like I should be prepared for everyone to be vulnerable. Like everyone is in danger.
Aelin or Rowan. Yeah.
I knew Aelin and Rowan would make it to the end because it's Sarah J. Maas. She's not going to kill her darlings like that. But I was underwhelmed by the amount of death, which was a good thing and a bad thing. Yeah,
I did my job too well.
You did. Anyways, point being, spoiler alert for the entire Maasverse, and for one of the first times ever, spoiler alert for the Empyrean series. So if you haven't read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame and you plan to, you're gonna want to just go la 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 when we start talking about that later.
Yeah, you'll just want to like drop off partway through this.
Just mute it, keep it playing so we get that playback time, and then unmute it. I don't know how we're gonna cue you back in, but just trust us.
Just pop on for like 2 seconds and be like, and if you hear the word Zayden or Shadow Daddy, just
put us back on.
Put it back on mute. Mute that shit again.
That's literally my brain every day. I'm just constantly having to mute the Fourth Wing thoughts.
Yeah. But finally we're gonna dive into just a little bit of the current events, since it's been all over the internet since the release date for Onyx Storm, which is end of January next year.
And when we get closer to that date, we'll definitely do, and maybe we'll do it earlier. We're still feeling it out. But if you want to see a Fourth Wing episode sooner rather than later, do let us know, because we are planning on making one.
Yes.
But we were just planning on timing it a little bit closer to book 3 coming out. But we could do it earlier if that's something that you so desire. So shoot us an email or DM us on Instagram or TikTok at thedownlore if that's something that you would like.
Yep. All right, so let's get into Throne of Glass.
Let's do it. Thoughts, feelings, lovers.
We're gonna start with Chaol Westfall. We have to start because it is one of the biggest controversies in the Throne of Glass world. It's very much like you hate him or you love him. He's kind of a polarizing character. Both of us happen to love him. I've met people who are like, I can't stand his whiny bitch ass, and we will have none of that slander.
Here's why Chaol Westfall is the best Throne of Glass character, and possibly, I'm gonna dare to say it, the best character in the Maasverse. Next to like Nesta is also a really great character.
Yeah.
Manon is a great character. Dorian is a great character. We'll get into why in just a moment. But I think Chaol might take the cake, Chaol and Nesta. And I like them for very similar reasons. First of all, we like understand who Chaol is. He is human. And he is one of the only characters in any of Sarah J. Maas's series that is purely human and remains that way throughout the entire time that he's on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes with a lot of baggage when everyone around you, everyone you love and care about,
Is super powerful.
is not only super powerful, but, you know, may long outlive you and forget you after you're gone.
Yeah. And not to mention, he's the captain of the guard, which you come to find out is really very performative. Like, he's not out here doing anything to like really influence the world, but he thinks he is for the first couple books, right? He like really believes in his purpose as a person.
Yeah, it's 22-year-old delusions of grandeur.
Yeah. And he's out here like thinking he's doing the Lord's work because he's, in his mind, like that's all they know. They don't realize the like big schemes that are going on behind the scenes. He's not privy to any of that. So to have your entire world and your entire perception of self just completely bashed and be like, oh, I was the captain of the guard, but the royal guard we were all puppets and there were actually some like goons in the background doing a whole bunch of shady shit the whole time right behind our noses or under our noses, and we were just here as the like front men to like look like we were protecting people. Mm-hmm. Like that messes with you. The poor guy just had his entire like life questioned and turned upside down, and everything he thought he was bringing to the table.
And not only his personal identity, but his world as a whole, right? Like when Aelin was revealed as, you know, Selena is Aelin and vice versa, and that Selena was actually Fae, that broke his entire reality, not just his identity, but like the world that he lived in flipped on its head in that moment. Yeah. The woman he loved was lying to him the whole time.
Right. And he was like, wait,
there's like,
as in my girlfriend? She was out here what?
There's like an international super powerful threat looming somewhere. He's human. He doesn't have any power to stand on. At least Dorian is super powerful, but like Chaol's whole identity is built on like, oh, I'm Dorian's defender.
Right. He's like, I got a sword.
And turns out, first of all, Daddy Dory can protect himself.
Yeah. More than protect himself. He can do some pretty interesting things with that magic of his. Like the sleeper hottest character in Throne of Glass, in my opinion.
He might be the hottest character in the Maasverse.
The shit that comes out of that man's mouth.
It's not even that. It's just like Dorian shares in the Azrael effect of like he knows when to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
He has that like aloof mysteriousness that just turns the allure meter up.
Yeah. And we turn the volume down.
Yeah.
Turn the allure meter up.
Exactly. We love a man who knows how to shut the fuck up.
Insane.
But anyways, I just like, I will never understand the comments of people saying that they find Chaol boring or non-complex when like Chaol is maybe one of the most complex characters Sarah J. Maas has ever written. Yeah. Because of the fact that he's grappling with all of this stuff that no other character has to deal with. Yeah. Like we understand Chaol's plight in a way that we will never understand Aelin's plight, for example. Aelin has the weight of the world on her shoulders. She knows she's expected to like sacrifice herself for the world, like has all of this power. She was born royal, like, and she has this big ego to match, right? She is aware that she has this, she's basically Atlas holding the world up.
Yeah. And she's been aware of that the whole time, even though we don't know it.
But no person alive on this earth is truly bearing that kind of burden. Right. Like, no one is like fated to surrender themselves to save the world. That's not a thing in our reality. But Chaol, I mean, we all know what it's like to be a small fish in a big pond.
Yeah. I think it makes him the most relatable character. I think his reactions if you like really just like sit with his reactions and then think about you as like as a person, they're not outlandish reactions. If your friends were super powerful and you felt like relatively insignificant now in comparison, yeah, you also would be a little bit insecure. And
then he gets disabled
on
top of it all. My poor baby Chaol. He's already human, has like, I was about to say no legs to stand on, and then I realized how mean that is.
So savage.
No, but he literally has no power in comparison
and no hope of ever like acquiring any.
And even the other like humans in the series, like Dorian still has some of the craziest power, which we'll get into in a second as well.
My God.
The craziest power in the series. And Chaol has no hope of ever having anything like that. He just has his 2 legs, his 2 arms, and then his 2 legs get taken away from him by the demon inside of the King of Outerland.
Yeah.
And that,
he's,
to me, to be like, it's basically just like kicking a man while he was already down. And these references, these analogies keep getting worse.
However, that did give us Farasha, the horsey.
It did. And it gave us Tower of Dawn.
And it gave us Tower of Dawn.
Which
it gave us Irene.
My personal favorite book in the entire Throne of Glass series. It was 5 stars for me. The character development was so good. I loved Irene and Chaol's developing relationship. I enjoyed Nesrin's experience with Sexy Bird Prince.
Yeah.
And
Sartok is low-key such a hottie romantic.
So underrated.
Like, the things he says to Nesrin, like, okay, sir, okay.
Like,
we're picking up what you're throwing down.
You the Empress, I think. And
she's like, cool.
Mm-hmm. I think Tower of Dawn was just, I really enjoyed the new world that Sarah J. Maas built in that book. And for some of the first time, I feel like she wasn't writing out of her depth. There wasn't a plot hole for her to fumble. The scope was very appropriate for the book.
Yeah.
And I think she just did a really good job tying everything together. And I think it took taking Chaol and Nesrin out of the whole ALLLL world that she maybe bit off a little more than she could chew with like the scale of everything for her to really shine, because what she does the best is character development. And
yeah, she really does.
Sometimes it can get lost in the wash when she's trying to do too much with the plot. So I just thought Tower of Dawn was a masterpiece for that reason. She did what she does best, which is write and develop compelling characters through their relationships and through like working through their trauma, and she did it in an insulated but very interesting and brand new setting that I really, really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, and then for Irene to figure out that the Valg are like a parasite, and the same way that she extricated the poison from Chaol, she could do that to those who are under the influence of the Valg back in ALLLL. And then the connection to Maeve being Valg that you get in the end. Like, I don't understand how you can skip Tower of Dawn, because regardless of whether you're a fan of Chaol as a character, the development, not only for him and Irene, but also just those 2 really pieces of information are critical to Kingdom of Ash. They are so critical. Irene literally saves the world. Okay? Irene and Dorian save the world. Love Aelin. Love her to death. She's great. She barely eked out a win against Maeve at the very end, but it was Irene and Dorian who were like, you know what? We got this. And they slayed, literally.
We needed that so bad. Imagine being pregnant and saving the world.
Oh my God. Irene is literally the MVP. She is the MVP of this entire series. Again, love Aelin to death, but like the fact that at the very end of it all,
be fucked without Irene.
No, exactly. If they didn't have Irene and they didn't have the raw magic and power to the level that Dorian had, because Aelin was kind of wiped out, right? Like by the very last battle, she's over here just like struggling to keep Maeve at bay, because she's just spent all of her literal life force energy trying to close these damn gates. And Mala's like, here, have one kernel of energy back so you don't die. And then she's supposed to like show up to battle and like rage against all of them. Like, no, she can't do that anymore. So if it hadn't been for Irene and Dorian, there would have been no ending to this. And I think that we miss that. Like, or, you know, the discourse misses the fact that Dorian and Irene are the ones who save the world.
So because we know the timeline of Kingdom of Ash, Throne of Glass, Crescent City, based on Aelin's fall through the portals,
those 3 sentences of her seeing the worlds, chills.
So we know that Aelin fell through the portals. So Kingdom of Ash is in line with Silver Flames because Feyre was pregnant, and it's in alignment with like around when Crescent City 1 is going to start. She passes through the city, and we know how Crescent City and ACOTAR align, obviously because of the crossover from House of Flame and Shadow taking place after the events of Silver Flames. We also learned in House of Flame and Shadow that the Asteri, their means of getting power was like a parasite in the water. Yeah. And I think the choice of the word parasite and the use of that mechanic is very suspicious, Sarah. Yeah. Because we know now that we know Bryce is the Horn, she can close portals. She came back to life, of course. She can open some portals again. And we know that all of these worlds are just different planets in the same universe. Yeah. And Aralea is by no means closed off from everything forever. Like, Aelin closed the portal on the gods, but I don't think that Throne of Glass world is fully closed off forever. Like, what if we recruit Irene to come save Crescent City?
Well, I know that the drop is something that they have to make because of this parasite, and like it was a creation by the Asteri. But like, imagine if Dorian made the drop. Okay, because he's human. But he's got power, and
he
so
needs to, because he needs to be with Manon forever.
He needs to live forever. I cannot continue to exist until I have an answer of how Dorian and Manon are going to live happily ever after forever. He needs to make the drop, is all I'm saying. Power levels off the Richter scale. Need him to make the drop.
Yeah, he's going to blow Bryce right out of the water.
Could you imagine Dorian swaggering into Crescent City and being like, where do I make this drop thing?
He's like, hey, you look like me. Hold my hand, Tarun.
The girls would be lining up to anchor that man. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, they would.
They'd be lining up around
Danica
the block.
Would come back from the dead.
She'd be like
Baxian who? I also just wanted to touch on really quickly before we move on, bringing it back to my love for Chaol and my misunderstanding of people considering him boring. It's one of the reasons that I think Chaol is so compelling is that he is the textbook definition of a complex character. I think there is a general delusion on the internet of what that means.
Right.
I'm going to just put my English teacher hat on really quick. We posted a TikTok recently where it was just a clip from our episode about Sarah J. Maas 2 weeks ago, where I said that I didn't like Sarah J. Maas's villains because they were like Scooby-Doo villains. Now, the clip was taken slightly out of context because I didn't give my full explanation of, we were really just talking about the final boss villains where they like monologue about their evil plans, assuming that the main character won't get away from the interaction, and then they get walloped. So a lot of people were commenting on the TikTok, oh, I disagree. Like, Maeve and Erewhon were really complex and well written. And I actually had to ask someone, what did you think made Maeve complex? Because I disagree.
Right. And we'll get into like what complex characters are, but the common answer is that like, oh, she went through so much and she has this whole backstory of like running away from her husband and escaping, and like she needs to have this power to like keep them away from her. Like, that was the common answer. Is like, that's why eventually people were like sympathizing that she's a complex villain. There was no defense of Erewhon, to be quite honest. There was
zero. Which is hilarious because we were talking about it. We were like, what is Erewhon's motivation? Because he's just like stuck here, and the only reason that he wants to take over this world is what? So that he can like bring more Valgan, and like he can't even get his brothers here. Well, so like what is he doing it all for?
His brother, Maeve is his brother's wife.
Yeah.
So like bro just like sends Erewhon on this like recovery mission, gets locked in a whatever sarcophagus. The brother's like, pity. Let's Erewhon just chill, locked up in a box. And then he comes back out.
For centuries.
Then he gets out. And his first thing is to, like, he's continuing to go after Maeve. And he also is just trying to, like, conquer this world. What is his motivation for any of this? What is he getting out of it?
He doesn't want Maeve because she offers himself to him on a silver platter. And he says, no, you're my brother's wife. I could never.
Right. What is he getting? What is there? And that's the thing, is that there's no... This is not like a means to an end for them. What is the end? We don't know.
Well, he does say like, oh, I want to remake this world to be just like mine, so that when I bring my brothers back, they'll like love it and it'll feel like home.
Just stay where you are.
Go home then.
Yeah, that doesn't explain anything.
Like literally go home then. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, it's just blown way out of proportion. It's conquest for the sake of conquest.
Right.
And that isn't compelling. That's not complex.
And
that is a very, very one-dimensional, cartoony villain motivation.
Right.
Which is why I said he's a Scooby-Doo villain. Because he literally talks about his evil plans and has no real, like, humanitarian motivation for wanting to do. A good villain does something either out of pure like selfish arrogance, like Arabin, where he would just like wanted to be rich, wanted Selena to be his little pet, right, and was really clever and manipulative about it. Right. That made him interesting to read. Or it's genuinely a villain who's doing something that harms a lot of people because they think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. They have clear objectives. And the ways that they go about trying to obtain said objectives are evil.
Like Tamlin. Like, he had lots of toxic behaviors, and people view him as a villain, which is totally fair. I don't consider Tamlin a villain in my mind. He's more of like an obstacle, a bump in the road.
Yeah, he's just a misguided man.
Yeah, poor guy. But like, but his intentions weren't malicious. He was doing it out of something selfish, and he just couldn't see that what he was doing was harming someone else. But he thought fully that he was doing the right thing. That's interesting. What's not interesting is I'm just a big, bad, scary guy, and I just want to have all this power and take over this world because I feel like it.
Yeah.
Or in Maeve's case, I'm just a big, bad, scary lady, and I ran away from my husband, and I want to stay gone.
But the thing is, and this is what I like keep saying, that explanation, that is fine to explain her presence in their world.
Yes.
It does not explain her behavior and her need to literally conquer their world. If anything, that makes her more obvious. Stop trying to be the queen of this world. Hide in plain sight. Like, it doesn't make sense for her to want to terrorize them. And then, other than she's just been there for a long time and she's bored, which is fine. But admit that that you're not after anything. Just say, "'Cause I can." But give it to us. Be fucking
own it.
For real. Say it with your chest.
Well, and then there's the whole thing where people were saying, oh, but like Maeve is also complex because
she's got trauma.
Well, she has trauma, and because she is like trying to get Aelin to team up with her.
Bestie. No.
We didn't read the same Kingdom of Ash because Maeve,
the word team implies
togetherness. Maeve had no intention of ever letting Aelin be her equal or partner. She wanted Aelin to swear the blood oath to her, which is literally just an act of submission and enslavement.
And she put the bitch in full body iron, basically, which is just that is not a form of endearment. That is not saying I want to work with you. That is saying I want you.
And she wanted to use her as a weapon to take
they were not teaming up. Maeve wanted ownership of her the same way she wanted ownership of Rowan and Lorcan and Gavriel and Vaughn, who we still haven't met, and Fenris and Connell, R.I.P.
R.I.P. Maeve is like not even I'm gonna make a Pokemon reference, by the way. So if you don't know anything about Pokemon, this might not make sense to you, but if you watched Pokemon when you were growing up and you remember Team Rocket and you remember the Team Rocket boss, Giovanni, he just like wanted to take over for the sake of taking over, and he was willing to like enslave legendary Pokemon for their power to do it. That's literally Maeve.
Actually,
she's
though,
literally a cartoon video game like Team Rocket boss, because she just wants to like take Aylin's power and use it for her own gain, and that's her only motivation. This is why I'm saying she's Scooby-Doo. She literally on that beach confesses her entire backstory, her entire plan. She doesn't confess her backstory to gain any sympathy or empathy from anyone. She's just like, I'm hiding and I'm going to use you to keep doing it. And that's the whole thing. That's Scooby-Doo. That's not complexity, okay? Just wanted to put that out there. Now we can define what complexity is. A complex character is one that has human intentions, human motivations, and complexity inherently means unpredictability, right? When you are a person, you are just basically like an amalgamation of experiences that you've had throughout your life. It should be the same way for a character. They've had this amalgamation of experiences and traumas and stuff that might help guide their decision making throughout their life, and it's going to influence them one way or another. But sometimes you can overcome that and make a different decision, or other times you'll succumb to it. That's complexity. Making a character feel like a person. And Chaol feels like a person. Maeve feels like a cartoon. That is the difference.
Right. And the characters, we have so much time with so many of these characters in Throne of Glass because the series is so long. And so you get to see how the experiences they go through change them, and how sometimes, like you said, like they do things that are unexpected. Like, be so serious. Did we ever expect Dorian to be a shadow daddy with shadow hands, like really into a really savage witchling? No, he kind of like showed up and we were like, oh, okay. That's obviously a very choice example, but like
we've all also been there. Like, it's way more dramatic than a breakup in this case, because his dad literally beheaded his like girlfriend, but he had basically just gone through a breakup and then was enslaved. This is just way beyond the scope of anything a human would go through.
Right. But he's dating this healer girl. Sorsha gets whacked, and then he gets enslaved, and then this witch saves him, and then he comes into his power and he goes and gets trained and suddenly knows how to use it, and then he's using it in the bedroom, and what?
We've all been there where like we've gone through a breakup and like something shiny and new comes along and makes you feel something again, and you're like, oh, let me follow this, but you're not emotionally available enough to be like, I'm in love with you immediately. And we haven't seen that from Sarah J. Maas, except right there,
right?
Which I thought was awesome.
And he's such a romantic in the beginning. He's he's very cordial as a prince, and he's into Selena like off the bat, and then he was into Sorsha, and he very kind of like quickly falls for these girls, which is like really cute, you know? And you're like, oh, he's adorable. Then he goes through
Sorsha gets murdered and he goes through the demon hell, and he comes out the other side being like all suave,
and he's like hold on, maybe I need to fuck a girl who's invincible. And it's a complete completely new territory for him. And him and Manon, like their relationship is very left open-ended, you know? So he's not all of a sudden head over heels, like down bad for a girl the way he was for Selena and Sorsha. Like, he's taking a different approach. Complex.
But I thought the way that Sarah wrote them, like developing not even like admittable feelings, but like care and empathy for one another, was really good.
Yeah. My favorite piece of fan art that like exists in this world,
that one where she's grabbing his face and there's a drop of blood.
There's a rivulet of blood.
Gotta put it up on the screen.
And he's wearing rings, which just hits the soul deeply. But it is the perfect piece of fan art, and it afflicts me every time I look at it. And it is all I ever want to send to people. I think I've like screenshotted it and sent it to so many people. It's probably on my phone camera roll like 16 times. It's so good. Anyway, love them. Big fans. Complex characters. Love them. Big fans. Flat characters, we're not saying they're bad. You can't have all complex characters because that would be overwhelming.
Yeah, you need to have a couple of characters in there that just like exist for the sake of the plot. They come in, do their thing, and then leave, and that's totally fine. Right.
We can't be tracking so many characters' emotional developments and emotional journeys and like, oh, they did something a little different this time. We can't be doing that for everyone or we'd be so overwhelmed. However, it would be nice if the villains at least had a little more complexity, especially in a series that's over 5,000 pages long, where this is literally like the crux of the issue is the villains. Defeating them.
Like, it works in a book like, and I'm going to bring it up again, and we're going to do an episode on it, I promise. So spoiler alert if you haven't read The Priory of the Orange Tree, but I'm going to bring it up because...
Get on it, because it's long and you're going to need time to read it. So just start now.
The villains in that book, and or like the conflict in that book is so fucking well written, because there's not just like a one big baddie. There is, at the end, there's a big baddie. It's like a dragon that emerges from the depths to end the world, basically. But everyone needs to unite against the dragon, and everyone has different political conflict between one another. So everyone's the villain. But everyone's also the good guy, because you follow 4 different people from 4 different factions,
regions,
4 different regions, 4 different countries, 4 different ways of life. You have,
and they all have to figure out how to find common ground and how to work their different political systems and magic systems and in tandem.
All been dealt very different hands.
Yeah, and they're all internally dealing with, you know, political turmoil as well within their own regions. And so it's a matter of like, okay, how do you figure your life out here? Because if you don't figure that out, then like you're not going to be able to rise to the challenge of like the global stage that needs saving.
Yeah, it's really excellently written and highly recommend that you read it. But case in point, all 4 of those characters and all 4 storylines are very complex because they all do intersect and clash with each other. And you see the main characters that you've been following have fights with each other at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I think that's why I loved it so much, because every single storyline had compelling, complex characters, and it was very fun to read as a reader because you're rooting for everyone. Right. And yet rooting for everyone means rooting against everyone.
Which reminds me of like, you know how in Heir of Fire is when we're introduced to the witches. We're introduced to Manon and all of the witches. And because the plots are separate to start, you got the witches doing their thing and you've got Aelin and Rowan doing their thing and all that. You're rooting for Aelin, you're rooting for Manon because you start to see that she's kind of a bad bitch and is a better bad bitch than the actual mean, crusty old witches. And the first time she and Aelin interact, it's a big ass fight. They are not allies. And so you're like, wait, I really like Manon, but like Aelin's also the homie number 1. So like what's going on here? And then eventually they make their way to being allies. And yeah, it takes Manon like getting her guts ripped out and like Abraxas dropping her out of the sky onto Aelin's boat and Dorian being like, hold up.
The hot witch is here.
Yeah, like maybe we should save her. And then they're allies. It's the progression of rooting for 2 characters, but then when they come into contact for the first time being like, they don't like each other. And then you're like, where do my loyalties lie?
I think that's why I love the witch plotline so much, and why the Death of the 13 like ruined my life.
I
saw it coming. I told Claudia a couple books before the end. I was like, I think Asterin might yield herself to save Manon. They're hinting at it pretty hard.
When you mentioned that, I was like, I need to keep my mouth shut.
I was scared. I knew that was gonna happen, but I didn't think it would be all 13. But that was wild, and that was the one part of Kingdom of Ash that made me cry. Although I came close when Abraxas was falling out of the sky, and I came close when Aelin was breaking out of the camp.
Yeah.
when she needed to get the mask off and she couldn't
take it off. That was tough. Yeah, that
was tough, but
that hurt. Which is funny because now you understand after reading that why when Azriel said to Nesta, take it off, when she was wearing the mask in the crossover episode of House of Flame and Shadow, it's like, oh, that phrase and another mask, and take it off again and again and again, repeated.
I'm so excited for ACOTAR 5.
Please. The Sarah posting
expeditiously.
Sarah posting a picture of herself in, I don't actually know where she is, but some snowy location writing this next book. Okay, what could it mean? We better be getting
Sarah and Taylor Swift love to drop their Easter eggs, so it's got to mean something, but we don't know yet, I guess.
Something wintry.
Winter Court? I don't know. I hope it's the Azriel book so much because we've been waiting so long for that.
Yeah.
And love more to goddamn death, but I do not want a Morgan book before I get my Azriel content.
There's a packing
Azriel
order.
Content. Okay? I need it. We all need it. It's been ordered. Sarah, do you hear us?
The prescription's been written. We all just need.
And he had been in Silver Flames, running around doing lots of spying in the Mortal Lands and stuff. And if we're talking about the world geography, the Mortal Lands is kind of like Scandinavia region. If we're talking due east.
Yeah, that's so true. Mm-hmm.
So it could be something like that. Also, we know Koshai is up in a lake somewhere.
Ooh, yeah.
So
all I want, I just want a scene.
Azriel.
I need a scene. If she gave us that image of snow, which means in my mind the first thing it jumped to, because I'm unhinged, is the sauna up by the cabin house. We need finally a Rhys, Cassian, Azriel at the sauna. Just what goes on? We need bro time.
We need to see bear witness to the Bat Boy snowball fight.
Yeah, snowball fight.
Mm-hmm. And we got our Frost and Starlight taste. So, and I don't think Sarah's gonna do something like that again. She wouldn't do that again. She's not giving us another Christmas special.
No.
Anyways, in conclusion to that, I really enjoyed Throne of Glass. I don't think it was my favorite Sarah J. Maas series just because they're much like the others. I just think the plot holes were truly and utterly gaping by the end, and they were patched up with band-aids, and just some of the stuff I was like, okay, this is a little much, Sarah. Even for you.
What is your favorite series of hers?
I think it's Crescent City, honestly, even though Flame and Shadow and Sky and Breath, just the first book was so good that it's kind of carrying the team, because the other two were so fun, but were a little floppiana in the fact that they just had Swiss cheese for a plot.
Yeah.
But Crescent City, I just have a great time. I'm not looking too hard at anything. I'm just having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited, and I love Bryson Hunt, and I'm excited to see what else happens in that world post Asteri, although Ethan and Therion and ACOTAR was just a cultural reset. I love ACOTAR. I just hate Feyre. Sorry. I don't hate her. I just think she's the least interesting of all of the SJM main baddies.
So valid.
But now that we're kind of offshooting from her, I do think the central cast and the world of ACOTAR is the most understandable because it's so contained, and we talked about this on the last episode. Some interesting stuff that she could do now that she's introduced the crossover, and now that we have the Dread Trove, we know where the Dust Court was. And I love Azriel. We have so much unexplored Azriel content. I love Nesta. She's my favorite female protagonist from any of the series.
Yeah,
that we've really focused on and been with.
She's so complex, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, because what I like about her is that she's got a very sassy side, and she can be really bitchy, but she also has her moments of like compassion, and you never know what you're gonna get. You know, you never know if she's gonna be like, why would I help you? Or if she's gonna like sympathize and be like, you're my bestie, I'm gonna do everything in my power to, you know, make sure you're okay. And Bryce lands in this middle ground where she and Nesta have some moments that where they bond, and they're like, yeah, we kind of have similar situations, and sometimes Nesta's nice to her and sometimes she's just like, no.
Yeah.
And you never know what you're gonna get with her. It's so good.
Like at her core, after Silver Flames, it's undeniable that Nesta's like grown, and she is a good person. She's always tried, but she was just so lost for so long.
Yes.
And then she had her entire world turned upside down by being dipped in the cauldron.
Yeah.
And then she
another way Dorian could become immortal. Send him swimming.
Make like Rowan and just dump it over him like an ice bath.
That scene will live rent free in my mind forever. So real.
Yeah, but and I love Crescent City because it's the one series where there isn't a goddamn pregnancy. Why do we keep having pregnancy? It's driving me insane, Sarah. I can't do it anymore. Like, why every time? Let them live.
Yeah.
Let them live for a minute.
Especially the humans. Like, don't give it to them.
Irene is a child. She's like 22.
Yeah.
And she just saved the world.
Like,
let her enjoy her life a little bit.
like she wants to go on spring break.
She should be at the club.
She just graduated from the Torre Chesme, for Christ's sake. She needs to go on a graduation trip.
Yeah, her Euro trip is overdue.
Yeah, it's time to go backpacking.
Instead, she's got to backpack the child around and the entire world, apparently, also.
And a husband. A
disabled husband.
Who's still not healed. Completely.
Oh my god. Anyways, yes. We love you, Sarah J. Maas. We hate you, Sarah J. Maas. And
we're not serious about that. We love her so much.
We love her. I'm gonna complain until the cows come home, but I'm still gonna eat it up every time. That's just how it goes.
Sometimes it takes me like finishing a series and then Natalie reading it for me to like actually synthesize what is going on, because I'm just in it so hard, and every single time I read something, even if it's like not great, I'm down really bad for the male main character, and every time I say that to Natalie, she's like, you're always down bad for the male main character. I'm like, so fair.
Did I lie? No lies detected.
So fair. So anyway, all that to say, I no longer have to keep my mouth shut about Kingdom of Ash.
Okay, switching gears to the other book talk darling, the Empyrean series.
Yes, Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and newly announced Onyx Storm.
Now, we just wanted to do a little bit of unpacking because we haven't discussed this series at all yet, and there's so many, because it's an ongoing series, so many crack theories about what could be coming.
Yes.
What's going on, and what everything means, because we also know that Rebecca Yarrow is also a Taylor Swift stan.
Yeah, and she's a queen of
and she
Easter
loves
eggs.
an Easter egg. So.
And she has told us, she has said in interviews that we have supposedly all the information we would need, or the clues we would need to piece together some very important pieces of information that she has not yet explicitly explained to us, but that the information is there. We just obviously don't know what exactly it is we're looking for, and so it's like hiding in plain sight, which is such a cruel
Easter
thing
egg.
to say.
Literally the definition of an Easter egg.
She's just like, you have all the facts. It's like when you go during an exam and you read a question and you're like, I don't understand, and you go up to the professor and you're like, you ask them something,
and they're like,
you have everything you need to answer this question, and you're like, I don't think I do, and they're like, you do, and you're like, there's something missing, it's not possible, and they're like, it is.
It's like when you go on an Easter egg hunt, literally, and like you're on a grass lawn, but the Easter egg you're looking for is fucking bright green.
Yeah, she's just,
that bitch is hiding. You ever had those camouflage Easter eggs? My mom used to buy the camouflage Easter eggs.
Oh, I didn't know they made camouflage
not camo
Easter eggs.
like traditional army camo print, because those would still be like relatively easy to find.
But what, like look like blades of grass?
Yes.
Be so for real. That's so mean.
It's an egg that's where the seam is on the long side of the egg.
Uh-huh. Oh, so
And
you can
on
lie
the
it down.
top,
Mhm.
It's like blades of grass, and on the bottom it's dirt. So she would just like bury them a little, and
That
they
is
were
so savage.
hard to find. It
That's
was
so funny.
hilarious, and they had them in like all different shades. So if your grass was brown,
Oh my
you're
God.
still fucked.
And
They
so
looked, there were some that
serious.
looked like rocks. Yeah,
That's insane.
elite Easter egg hunting at my
Wow.
house in 4th grade.
I just, cannot. No, mine were always hot pink and like,
Of course.
all the pastels.
So as for Easter egg hunting, we're doing some elite, like my mom level Easter egg hunting in this series right now.
Yeah, we got it.
So we have some very, very interesting unanswered questions that we would like to discuss.
So let's start with the title, shall we?
Yes, let's start.
So in our last episode, when we were talking about Sarah J. Maas and her characters and the way she describes her characters, one of the things we mentioned is how she repeats over and over again certain details like eye color, right? And so we have come to notice, obviously, like certain eye colors that are not even naturally occurring are assigned to the male main characters. Xaden is no exception. Also, by the way, this would be the point if you're if you haven't read Fourth Wing, like right here, right now, hit
Tune
mute.
out.
Okay, because I'm gonna say right now, his eyes in the first book and the second book all the way until the end are described as gold flecked onyx eyes.
What a sentence.
Just such a mouthful. And then the extended version of that, which we get at the very end of Iron Flame and is the detail that changes everything, hit mute now, is when they are described as red rimmed gold flecked onyx eyes.
RRGFOE.
Such a mouthful and so hurtful. So hurtful. When I saw that written, I nearly...
We had very different reactions to that. Claudia was like, and I was like, oh my God.
My soul left my body. I was like, you can't do this to my man Xaden. Be so serious. And Natalie was like, this is
like,
so
come
stupid.
on, dude. I had a feeling it was going down when he started having the dreams. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that was not...
Something bad's gonna happen to
That
my
was
boy.
not great. But all that to say, Onyx is Xaden's eye color. And the book's called Onyx Storm. Violet creates lightning. That's like part of her magic, right? So like
we have Onyx
Storm.
eyes and Storm wielding whatever. So we have 2 pieces of what could be a puzzle. However, there could be a larger meaning, and we've just been kind of speculating on what that could be, because Iron Flame just sounds like a really strange generic phrase at first glance, but then as you read the book, it's actually like the answer to the riddle of how they're gonna... I don't even remember what the plot was, to be honest with you. what even was the Iron Flame?
well,
It
was,
illuminated on a pillar, but like what was it for? I forget.
they needed all of the, hold on, now I'm like mentally backtracking. It was like they needed all 7 types of dragon fire.
Right. Oh, to expand the wards. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they needed all 7 types of dragon fire to light an iron flame on top of this like pillar of onyx, basically, or is it a pillar of iron? I forget. It's one of them. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Some sort of rock.
But there's like a flame that ignites on top of this thing, and as long as the flame is lit, the wards are active or whatever. So it ended up being the answer to a riddle. So Onyx Storm could also mean something similar, but we just don't know.
Right.
And part of that is we have a lot of unanswered questions about Violet, and we know that she bonded to 2 dragons, which is like never before seen. But when you bond to 2 dragons, you get 2 signets.
Right. Which we should have like thought about in the first book, but I think we were so just
We were
kind of
discounting Andarna so much.
Yeah, it was just still
she was just baby girl.
There was so much unknown about her. And now she's a teenager / grown up, and she's a bad bitch. And she's her own breed of dragon. And she's sassy and we love her. So now we're like, okay, what is her second signet going to be? And we know from just everyone else's like singular signets, that it's the person themselves. The type of magic comes from them. The power to fuel it comes from the dragon. So the actual way that the magic manifests has nothing to do with the dragon per se. Andarna is a little bit special because she's like literally waited for Violet. Like she made it very clear that like there's a reason she bonded Violet. And so that being said, Violet's going to have a second signet now that Andarna has the power to fuel it. Now that she's gone through her like, what, you know, the little nap she took and then like woke up and was like, I'm a big girl now. So here are our theories.
So there's a couple things. We'll start with the one that kind of correlates most strongly with Andarna having waited for Violet.
Yes.
Because if Andarna waited for Violet, that clearly is not just because of who Violet is as a person, as much as it is how Violet and Andarna together, coupled in power, can accomplish some goal. And obviously, the goal is to defeat the Venin.
Yeah.
Okay? We know that the Venin, there's no current cure for it. They've been trying to cure the Venin through Nolan and Jack Barlow. So they've been trying to cure Venin. Now Xaden is Venin, so there's all the more reason to like be desperate for a cure. The cure would kill two birds with one stone, right? It would save Xaden, and it would end the conflict and the scary encroachment of the Venin on the world.
Right.
So if that's the case, then Violet's second signet could have something to do with curing the Venin.
Right. And we've already had little hints of like,
she's a poison master.
Yeah,
blah,
she
blah,
did the
blah.
whole like poisoning her opponents to give herself a leg up during her, you know, first year when she would have to like spar with people because she was physically not up to their like strength levels. Mm-hmm. So like we've got hints that she's inclined in that way.
Yes. We also know that, well, this is just going to open a can of worms, but it's okay. We're going to do it. We also know, or there are theories that I'm fully on board with, that, and Rebecca Yarrow has said herself, we're going to get an answer as to why Violet's hair is silver, like why she is the way she is in the next book. Oh my God,
yes.
We know from the inscriptions above the chapter that General Sorengale was talking to Nolan about curing Venin long before the book events took place. Mm-hmm. There are theories that Violet's dad was Venin or was studying Venin, and that's why he's dead. And or maybe he's not dead. Maybe he's off somewhere. We don't know.
Anyone who is said to be dead but whose body we have not seen in this series, I do not believe for a second that they're actually dead. I will believe it when there is a body bag and confirmed identities.
If Jack Barlow was like pronounced dead under a cliff and came back as Venin, girl, Violet's dad could be very much alive. And I fear that he's one of the like priest guys that's like down bad.
Well, and also like Violet's mom had a quote unquote flu or whatever when she was pregnant. Right. And that's why they say like Violet came out with her like, you know, her particular subset of like the silver hair, the hair that loses color at the end, and her physical weaknesses are because of this. And so, okay, what exactly is it that caused this flu? Like, we still don't know. Was it,
could have been Venin related.
Yeah, exactly. Is all we're saying.
Yes. Also, on that note, on that thread, we know that Andarna formed a scorpion tail, and much like humans manifest their signets based on what they need, dragons choose their tails or form their tails in their dreamless sleep based on what they need. And Andarna is her own special breed of dragon, but she also has a scorpion tail. And scorpion tails are, say it with me, poisonous. So we're like, that's suspicious, that's weird. Mm-hmm. Andarna's poison maybe has something to do with creating the Venin cure.
Yeah. And that may or may not be tied to Violet's second signet, but it could just be something on its own altogether.
I would prefer it if it were that, because then we would conserve Violet's second signet for something else,
badass.
Which is which also I think makes more sense, because if we already have all the information that we need to figure out what her second signet is, that means it apparently has manifested. We've seen it used before in Iron Flame. It already happened. Xaden didn't become Venin until the end of Iron Flame, so she didn't need to cure Venin. She just needed to defeat them. There was no motivation for her to cure Venin until Xaden became one.
So true.
So I don't think that her signet is going to have to do with the cure. I think she has the Poison Master knowledge and Andarna's Tale to do that.
Right. I think I also would prefer if it was separate, because
I think her signet is something else, especially because she wouldn't have been able to use her venin curing signet in this book.
Right. And so all the venin cure, poison, scorpion tail, apothecary of Violet Sorrengail aside, what else could her signet be? Knowing that, like, pretty sure she saw Xaden's dreams, you know what I mean? Like,
so here's my theory.
What? She saw Xaden's dreams in Iron Flame.
A lot of people missed this.
That she saw their dreams?
Yeah.
Oh,
a lot of people on TikTok that I've seen, like, just don't make the connection, or like people I've talked to in real life also, like, haven't made the connection that they had the same dream and that it wasn't Violet's dream.
It was Xaden's dream. And Xaden is an intrinsic, but that means that he can sense other people's intentions and not the other way around. Just because he's intrinsic, like, it doesn't mean that someone can get into his mind unless they are also in some way intrinsic. So, twofold here. Theory number 1. Violet is also an intrinsic. Of some sort. Maybe that she can influence other people's intentions, because she does have the need for, like, sharing knowledge and sharing information very quickly, because she's got that, like, general strategic good war battle brief mindset. Yeah. And Xaden has said, you know, he's always needed to know other people's intentions. It's something that he's kind of secretive. So he wants to know information about people. He's not a big sharer. But Violet is more into communication. And so to be able to influence other people would be more along the lines of her personality. And it's complementary to Xaden too. He can sense other people's intentions.
And we've been waiting for a complimentary signet from them, because we've been told that they are going to have one.
Right. But to be fair, when she accidentally strikes lightning and sparks fires, like, his shadows do snuff him out. So that is somewhat complimentary, but only because she's a terrible marksman with her lightning.
This is true. So that brings me to my second theory, which is my personal theory.
And it's my favorite, and I really hope it's this, because it would be so badass. And that is
sick. I haven't seen anyone else say this online, so I'm really hoping that I'm right, because it would be such an ego boost to be right. I think that Violet is a mirror, and she can reflect other people's signets,
any of them.
So when she dreams Xaden's dream, she's just reflecting his intrinsic ability with her mirror ability.
Yeah. So she's having the dream, not like she's in Xaden's head, but because she's, like, siphoning his specific type of power and doing the same thing that he's doing. It's different than a siphon in that she's not like sucking his energy. But she can, like, do what other people can do with their magic.
And to me, it makes sense, because she's always viewed herself as weak, and she's very good at identifying other people's weak points, but struggles to exploit them because she doesn't have a lot of physical prowess herself. So if she were able to mirror other people's strengths and recognize their weaknesses, she could, like, give them a taste of their own medicine from the Violet Apothecary. Yeah, so that's my personal theory. I really hope that it's true. We're going to find out in book 3. But the fourth and final and most boring theory would be that she's a distance wielder, which was something that was mentioned offhandedly, and which, like, we maybe saw evidence of, because there was lots of description in the final battle of her, like, falling so slowly and, like, wow, I've never seen you run that fast, and just, like, little comments like that about her somehow being in a place way faster than she should. and time slowing down and stuff. I think it would be so fucking boring if we just got one like offhanded comment of like, oh, distance wielding is so rare and we haven't seen one in so long,
which we already heard about.
Oh, I would be so annoyed if that was it.
And that's already the deal with lightning. Lightning is rare. Like, we don't need to give her something else that's...
She's already the super special extra rare superpower princess, and we don't need her to be double super special extra powerful princess.
I want it to be something intrinsic, if only because the intrinsics are executed on the spot, right? And so
it would have to be her secret with Xaden.
Yes, the same way Xaden now has the
now
secret
they're
with
beefing.
Oh
my god. So, yeah, speaking of Violet and Xaden, if you think that they're not endgame, what book have you been reading?
Okay, here's my thing, and anyone who brings this up, this is what I tell them. Rebecca Yarrow spent way too much time in Iron Flame, where they started out broken up, and she spent way too much time weaving them back together and bringing them back together and having really adult conversations and like pretty mature communication levels between the two of them as the book progressed. She invested too much into that particular part of the book for them to not be endgame. Like, it would be such a waste. There were probably like a third of the book, like 200 pages of that book is Violet and Xaden like trying to figure out how they're going to get back together, and then getting back together and talking about it and trying to navigate the fact that like Xaden still has secrets and Violet's not okay with that. And there are a lot of conversations in there that are very adult and like mature.
Yeah.
And I just don't think she would have invested that much time if we were going to have like Dane come back and suddenly be endgame, or someone new sweep in and possibly be endgame.
Also, let's not forget their dragons are bonded.
They're going to be together forever regardless. Like, literally physical proximity is required for the rest of their lives. It's Violet who's the one that's questioning it the most, right? Like, Xaden's like...
Especially now.
But I think part of like finding the cure and having to deal with Xaden being Venin, that also takes up time, right? Like, we've got 3 books left in this series. It would be like boring to have them go through like break up, get back together, break up, get back together, just on the relationship scale.
Right.
That would be boring. But now they've done that once. Like, they've had the emotional something get in the way of their like relationship that had really not much to do with an actual threat to them. It was like an internal conflict. Now there's an actual threat. And so now Violet's got to go and save her mans. And that's going to take time. Like, they're going to have to figure out the cure. They're going to have to figure out how to use it, how to make it safe, how to test. Like, there's a lot that's going to have to go into it.
And they're at war. So
there's war. And she can still exist with Xaden in proximity to her. Like, he's not a threat to her yet, because Jack Barlow was like, dicking around at college, like sparring on the mat with all of them, looking like he had bloodshot eyes the entire time when he was really Venin. So he's like, clearly Xaden's not a threat to Violet right off the bat.
And no one knew. Like, it's not like everyone's gonna immediately find out that Xaden is Venin. Like, this is a secret still.
Yeah, he's just gotta like wear shades every once in a while.
Hey, caramba. But yeah, I think it's going to be a fun time, and I'm, it's a long way off, but I'm anxiously awaiting book 3. I think it'll be good. I'm glad they're giving Rebecca her time to write this one, because if we're being so for real, Iron Flame was rushed.
Iron Flame was written in 6 months at the same time that she was writing a different book, a contemporary romance. She gave 2 books in 6 months. She really
gave it to the girls, but I think she spread herself too thin, and
I think even she's admitted that, like, she needed more time for this one.
She needed more time for this one, and she absolutely should take it, and we will patiently and happily wait so that we don't get typos in the next one.
Yeah. And knowing that we have 3 books left, like, it doesn't need to be...
Yeah, let's savor it.
The plot doesn't need to be rushed. I'm just happy we have a due date. I'm just happy we have a date on the calendar, because the PTO can be requested. We can plan. It comes out on a Tuesday. Like, we can plan
I'll take off Tuesday to Thursday. Friday, I will just make it work and like mentally process, and then we'll record on Saturday.
Exactly. Like, we can now plan our lives.
Yes.
So speaking of planning lives, that's kind of far in advance, but what are you reading right now, Miss Natalie?
Right now, I am recovering from my Throne of Glass hangover by reading Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, which is now a TV show. I haven't seen the show, but the reason I picked this book up is because it's very similar to the book that I'm writing in terms of tone and topic. I am also writing a silly little black comedy about the apocalypse.
Hot.
And I won't say much more, but this book has been really helpful for me and it's very different. My writing style is very different from Neil and Terry's, and the humor is like somewhat similar, but there are definitely differences that make me feel like, okay, there's a market for my book still, even though there's this one. Because my book is less centered on the actual event of the apocalypse and more centered on a character being faced with it. That's all I'll say about it. But yeah, it's been really helpful to read something other than Sarah J. Maas that is kind of similar to what I'm trying to emulate, and to really like get a feel for pacing in this kind of book and tone and what exactly the characters are doing and how the setting is being built and stuff, because it's very similar to my book in all of those facets. So
and in length, like yours is going to be a standalone, this is a standalone, so how do you accomplish an entire fantasy story arc in one book?
Yep.
Instead of 8?
Yeah, exactly. 8. So yep, that's what I'm reading. Other fun things, my beloved Pierce Brown, the author of the Red Rising series, he's currently working on the last book, Book 7, Red God, and he posted an Instagram story last week, and he said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is, the bad news is, it's not done yet. The good news is, it's a fucking cool book.
Like, exactly like that.
And so that got me excited. And we'll definitely do Red Rising episodes closer to that release date. But I have been saving the books 4 through 6 for closer to that release date so that they'll be fresh in my mind when we do the episode. Yeah. But I have read and devoured books 1 through 3, and the reason I stopped is because the first 3 are like basically a trilogy, and then there's a generational jump for the last 4. So I'm biding my time and anxiously letting them sit on my TBR until closer to. But I'm very excited about that. Similarly, we have Dune Part 2 just came out, the movie, and Dune Messiah was just greenlit and announced. So we'll be getting a 3rd Dune movie, which is very exciting to me as a massive Dune fan.
Slay for the Dune fans out there.
So Dune fans, Dune episode is incoming.
Yes, I am currently reading Dune, the first book. And then I will see the movies, and then we will record an episode on it. So it'll all be very fresh in my mind when we serve that.
Yeah, and we're going to serve it hot and fresh because Dune is one of my favorite books. It's one of the books that got me back into reading. I read it in 2020 over Christmas break. So, and I was just like, this looks cool. I picked it up at Target with my mom, and I was like, this looks cool.
Love a Target impulse buy.
Then I lived for it. So that was fun.
Slay.
I actually have the box set over there. I read Dune Messiah, and then I took a break. And I will probably continue to read them throughout this year because I do have all of them sitting right there. I've just been sidetracked by other things, obviously. But yeah, Dune Book 1 encompasses the first 2 movies, and so the events are very fresh in my mind because the movies are very, very faithful to the book, and I absolutely love them, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yeah, so that's gonna be its own episode, one of our episodes later this month. Dune Book 1, movies 1 and 2.
Anything else before we wrap up?
No, we love Chaol Westfall. Let's go.
We love Chaol Westfall. Live Manon live. see you next time. Make sure to rate us on Spotify if you're listening there. Subscribe to us on YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Come play in the TikTok comments or the Instagram comments.
We have a good time there.
We do have a good time. We talk about Scooby-Doo villains and discuss the complexity of characters like Maeve. And we want to do it with all of you as much as possible. So
come play with us. Anyways, bye.
Bye.